The lights in the congressional hearing room were unusually harsh tonight, not because of the bulbs, but because of who was sitting across from each other. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez adjusted her mic. Her eyes were fixed, unmoving, sharp as a blade. Donald Trump, seated exactly 14 feet away at the opposite end of the long mahogany table, wore his signature scowl, the kind that masked uncertainty with arrogance. The moderator barely got through the first question. Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, do you believe the Trump administration's past policies have damaged future generations? AOC didn't hesitate. Her voice was calm, but cold. Absolutely, she said. He built towers, not schools. Resorts, not libraries. Golf courses, not classrooms. And now, he dares to lecture us on what the next generation needs? A rumble passed through the chamber. Trump leaned forward, palms on the desk. You know nothing about building, he growled. I created jobs. I created wealth. I created America's comeback. You created fear, AOC snapped. Fear of immigrants, fear of progress, fear of truth. You weaponized it like a tool and wrapped it in a red hat. The audience went still. Even the aides, normally glued to their phones, looked up. Trump straightened his tie, forcing a smile. You say I built towers? You're right. And what have you built, Congresswoman, besides Twitter threads and student loan complaints? AOC didn't blink. She reached under the desk and lifted a thin folder. This is Maria, she said, opening it. She's 15. She used to live in a shelter your budget cuts defunded. Today she's in STEM classes because we pushed through emergency grants you vetoed. I don't build towers, Mr. Trump. I build futures. For a second, just one, Trump didn't speak. His lips parted like he might say something, but nothing came. AOC leaned in, voice now steel. You left people behind. I find them. The moderator cleared his throat. Mr. Trump, would you like to respond? Trump's jaw moved, but his voice had lost its usual thunder. That girl probably had help from. AOC cut in. From her community. Not your tax breaks. The room tensed. The moderator waved, but it was useless now. The match had started. Two visions of America were colliding, and this wasn't going to be polite. Not tonight. Trump shifted in his chair. The silence after AOC's last words wasn't empty, it was loud. Heavy. He wasn't used to it. And he hated how still she was. Composed. Controlled. It made him seem rattled. Well, he said, voice regaining its bark, your little story is touching, but fairy tales don't run nations. Businessmen do. Builders do. People like me. AOC nodded slowly. Yes, you built towers. Shiny, gold-plated symbols of power. But every brick was paid for with tax avoidance, unpaid contractors, and lawsuits you settled in secret. A hush fell. One of Trump's aides leaned forward, ready to intervene. But Trump lifted a hand to hold him back. He wasn't done. You think you know everything because you read some articles and shout in Congress, Trump snapped. But I've been in the real world. The one where paychecks matter. The one where people aren't crying about pronouns, they're trying to put food on the table. That word, crying, hung in the air like acid. AOC stood. Let me tell you about the real world, Mr. Trump. The real world is where my constituents wait 3 buses just to get to their second job. The real world is where a single mother of 3 makes your resort beds for $12.50 an hour with no health care. The real world is where your empire means gentrification, not opportunity. Trump leaned back, folding his arms. You sound angry. I am, AOC said. Because you played president like it was reality TV. But for us? For us, the eviction notice was real. The hospital bill was real. The ICE raids were real. And you smiled for the cameras. The moderator raised a hand again, this time pleading. Please, can we bring this back to? No, AOC cut in. Let America hear this. Let them hear how he dodged responsibility every time it counted. A pandemic response delayed. Families torn apart at the border. Denial while bodies piled up. And still, he wants applause. Trump's fists clenched on the table. You act like you've done something historic, he shot back. Like you've changed the country. She stepped forward, her voice calm but cutting. I didn't change the country. I reminded it who it belonged to. For a brief second, you could hear only the clock ticking. The moderator's voice finally returned, frail but clear. We'll take a 5-minute recess. As the camera lights dimmed, Trump glared at AOC. But she wasn't looking back. She was staring down at the file of stories, students, nurses, parents, that he had tried to erase. Because this wasn't a debate for her. It was a reckoning. The lights were down, but the energy in the room hadn't shifted. The 5-minute recess was meant to cool things off. Instead, it only made the silence louder. AOC stood by the coffee station, flipping through her notes, but her eyes kept drifting to the reflection in the window, Trump's reflection. He hadn't left the room. He was standing, arms crossed, jaw tight, eyes burning. An aide approached him with a phone. Mr. President, Fox wants to run a quick segment. He waved them away. Then, quietly, he walked toward her. You think you won? He asked, low voice, almost private. I think America's watching, she replied, without turning around. And I think for the first time, they're not clapping. Trump scoffed. You're popular for now. Social media makes everyone famous for 5 minutes. But when this country needs leadership, they don't look to influencers, they look to strength. AOC turned. Then maybe that's your problem. You think loud equals strong. But strength is a teacher staying after hours with no pay. Strength is a nurse working 2 shifts with a broken mask. Strength is a child raising her siblings while her mother's deported because of your policies. Trump stepped closer. You love to blame me. No, AOC said. I blame the system you worship. One that builds towers and calls them success, while letting schools rot. Trump's expression changed, just for a moment. A flicker of something like hesitation. She didn't stop. Do you know what it feels like, AOC asked, to grow up watching your parents skip meals so you can eat? To be told you don't belong in rooms like this? To walk into Congress and still be called aggressive just for telling the truth? Trump didn't answer. He adjusted his cufflinks, a reflex he used when the words started cutting too close. You built your legacy out of cement and steel, she said. I'm building mine out of people. Real people. And they don't forget. Just then, a production assistant poked her head into the room. We're live in 1. AOC turned to leave, but stopped at the doorway. Without looking back, she said. You built towers. I build futures. Let's see which one lasts longer. Then she walked out. Trump remained still. The cameras weren't on yet, but for the first time in a long time, he looked like a man unsure if he could still control the room. The red light above the camera flicked on. We're live again in 3, 2. The moderator sat stiffly, notes trembling slightly in his hand. We now return to the session on national education and equity with former President Donald Trump and Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. The camera cut to Trump first. His expression was neutral, calculated. He nodded, but the fire in his eyes had dimmed. Then the frame widened to reveal AOC, composed, confident, and somehow even more charged than before the break. The moderator tried to reset the tone. Let's pivot to education funding. What models do each of you propose to ensure long-term stability? Trump struck first, voice firm. We need school choice. We need competition. The private sector works. That's why America used to lead the world, not because of public schools run by union bosses who donate to her party. AOC tilted her head, almost amused. You know what else used to lead the world, she said. Segregated schools. Child labor. Lead in the water. The good old days you romanticize left most of us locked out. Trump cut in. I'm trying to give parents control. You gave billionaires control, she snapped. You turned public education into a playground for hedge funds. My district didn't get robotics labs and smart boards. We got mold. We got windows that don't open. We got teachers rationing supplies while your donors bought yachts. The crowd stirred. Journalists typed faster. Phones lit up. Twitter was already on fire. The moderator interjected again. Let's keep this civil. But AOC leaned forward. Her voice lowered, not in volume, but in gravity. This isn't about civility. This is about truth. She turned to Trump, not blinking. Your America is built on height, towers, walls, numbers. But mine is built on depth. On kids who rise even when the system tells them to sit down. You don't understand that because you never had to fight for your seat. You bought it. Trump's mouth tightened. I fought for everything, he shot back. You don't know what I've sacrificed. AOC's gaze didn't move. Name one thing you sacrificed, she said quietly. Not money. Not TV time. Something real. Silence. Even the moderator looked up. Trump opened his mouth, then paused. The words didn't come. AOC continued. I sacrificed nights studying while working double shifts. I sacrificed safety when I walked into Congress and was called a communist terrorist for asking why insulin costs $1,200. I sacrificed comfort to stand for people you ignore. The moderator, wide-eyed, looked down at his papers. He whispered into the mic, we're going to need to extend this segment. Because everyone was watching now. Not just the room. Not just the country. The world. And for once, it wasn't Trump they were listening to. The moment AOC uttered those last words, the ripple went far beyond the chamber. On the streets outside Capitol Hill, the crowds watching from jumbotrons began to shift, from quiet awe to thunderous cheers. Inside the digital realm, the impact was instant. #YouBuildTowers trended #1 globally within 5 minutes. Clips of AOC's takedown spread like wildfire. TikTok edits with dramatic music. Instagram reels with split screens comparing Trump's casinos to rundown schools. X, formerly Twitter, was ablaze. One viral post simply read. He built towers. She built hope. Meanwhile, in the hearing room, the moderator was no longer guiding the debate had taken a life of its own. A staffer passed Trump a phone with a muted screen. Trending headlines read. AOC shifts power in live debate. Trump cornered by one question, what did you sacrifice? He read them quickly, jaw tightening. I'm not going to sit here and be lectured by someone who thinks they invented struggle, he barked. AOC didn't flinch. You didn't invent success, she replied. You inherited it. Then packaged it like a brand. A murmur spread across the room. Even Republican staffers were exchanging glances. Look, Trump continued, maybe you've got a few good speeches. But speeches don't build this country, deals do. Power does. AOC slowly stood again, calm as before, but now her tone shifted. Lower. More intimate. You don't get it, she said. Power isn't screaming over someone. It's lifting someone with you. Real power doesn't show off. It shows up. She reached into her folder again. This, she said, holding up a second paper, is from a fifth-grade classroom in the Bronx. The students drew pictures of what they want to be. Engineers. Artists. Teachers. Astronauts. She turned the paper around. The camera zoomed in. In the corner, she said, one kid wrote, "I want to be strong like AOC. I want to make people feel safe." Trump rolled his eyes. "That's cute," he said. "But one drawing doesn't run a nation." AOC didn't back down. She took one breath. "No. But it tells you where we're headed. And who we're choosing to follow." A beat of silence. The room wasn't clapping. It wasn't gasping. It was just listening. Even Trump, for all his bravado, seemed momentarily unsure of how to pivot. AOC sat down slowly, her hand still resting on the child's drawing. Outside, cameras captured the shift in tone. The crowd watching in Times Square erupted in applause. In Oakland, a woman watching on her break whispered, "She's doing it." In Kansas, a student rewound the live stream 3 times just to hear her final line again. And in that moment, one thing was clear. This wasn't just a debate anymore. It was a turning point. 3 hours after the debate ended, the Capitol corridors buzzed like a disturbed hive. Senators ducked into side rooms, aides whispered into earpieces, and reporters swarmed the marble halls like bloodhounds. Everyone was asking the same thing. Did AOC just end Trump's grip on the narrative? Trump exited the chamber with tight lips and zero ad-libs. No impromptu victory speech. No quip for the cameras. Just a curt wave and a forward line. No comment. Fake debate. But outside, the world was no longer waiting for Trump's spin. AOC, flanked by staffers, walked calmly into the press gallery. The silence broke into a flurry of questions. "Congresswoman. Did you expect your remarks to go viral? Was that line rehearsed, 'You built towers, I build futures'? Do you think you just shifted the national conversation?" She paused, turned toward the mics, and spoke not to the cameras, but to the people watching. "I didn't say anything tonight I haven't said before," she said. The difference is, this time the country was finally ready to hear it. Her voice was steady, but her eyes sparkled. Calm thunder. Back inside the Capitol, GOP leaders scrambled. Some privately fumed that Trump had looked unfocused. Others admitted, off record, that AOC had scored a hit that would echo all the way to 2028. Even some Republicans couldn't deny it. "Say what you want about her politics," muttered one senator. "But she speaks with a clarity that cuts through concrete." Meanwhile, Democratic leadership held a private meeting within the hour. One aide whispered, "We need to decide if she's our future, or if we're just standing in her way." Across social media, the line had become a symbol. "You built towers. I build futures." It was graffitied on digital billboards in LA. It was written in chalk outside public schools in Detroit. It was screen-printed overnight onto T-shirts being sold in D.C. corners by morning. For Trump, the silence was unfamiliar. His Truth Social post, hours later, was unusually tame. She reads from scripts. "I built America. She builds hashtags." Sad. The post got engagement. But it didn't trend. Because while Trump posted, AOC's voice was still echoing. Late that night, in her small apartment, she sat alone, phone buzzing, notifications endless. She opened a DM from a 16-year-old in Ohio. "They told me politics wasn't for girls like me. Tonight, I think I believe again." She didn't screenshot it. Didn't repost. She just sat with it. Because that was the future she was building. And no tower, no name, no old empire could ever overshadow it. AOC sat at her childhood kitchen table. The linoleum was still cracked in the same corner it had been when she was 9. Her mother had covered it with a sticker of a sunflower back then, now faded and peeling. She wasn't supposed to be here. Her team had planned a national interview, breakfast with donors, a rapid-fire press response to the most viral moment of her career. Instead, she called it off. She needed this. A chipped mug of coffee. A quiet morning. A moment to breathe. Outside, the neighborhood was just waking up. The sound of buses, the faint shout of a street vendor setting up early. Her mother shuffled into the kitchen, wearing an old sweater and surprise in her eyes. "You came home," she said. AOC nodded. Her mother smiled gently, opening the fridge. "I saw what you said." "I meant it," AOC replied. "I know," her mother whispered. "That's why it worked." They didn't say much else. They didn't need to. Mar-a-Lago, 9:04 a.m. Donald Trump stood in a bathrobe staring at 3 television screens, Fox News, OAN, and CNN, all playing the same highlight clip, AOC's line about building futures. His inner circle had thinned. Jared wasn't returning calls. Ivanka had stayed in New York. Only one advisor, Craig, remained in the room, shifting nervously by the bar cart. Trump pointed to the screen. "She thinks that's leadership," he scoffed. "Emotion? That's not power." Craig cleared his throat. "With respect, sir, it connected." Trump turned slowly. "She got lucky." "Just a moment." Craig hesitated. It wasn't just a moment. It was clarity. People heard her. Trump threw the remote onto a leather couch. "She's a congresswoman. I was president." Craig lowered his voice. "But right now, she's writing the next script, and you're reading the last one." A beat passed. Cold. Trump dismissed him with a wave. But the words lingered. Later that day, across America. In a high school in Houston, a teacher played the debate clip in civics class. In a church basement in Chicago, organizers quoted AOC's line as inspiration for a youth mentorship program. In a steel town in Pennsylvania, a laid-off worker posted on Facebook, "I used to believe in Trump. I think I believe in something new now." AOC didn't post anything new that day. She didn't need to. Her silence was the statement. Because while Trump scrambled to reclaim the stage, AOC was doing something more dangerous. She was building momentum, quietly, steadily, from the ground up. Not with gold. With people. The gymnasium smelled like fresh paint and cheap speakers. Folding chairs lined the floor, packed shoulder to shoulder with teens, teachers, and tired parents. AOC took the stage without music. No intro video. Just a mic and a fold-out table behind her with a stack of notebooks donated by a local church. "Before we talk about policy," she began, "let me ask you something real." She held up a journal from the table. "How many of you have ever been told to stay quiet? That you're too young, too angry, too different?" Almost every hand rose. She nodded. "Good. Then you already know what I'm fighting." There were no TV cameras. No major networks. But a dozen kids live-streamed from their phones, and one clip. Her holding up that journal would hit 10 million views before the sun went down. "You see," she continued, "someone once told me to stop yelling. But I wasn't yelling. I was trying to be heard. And if someone calls you too loud, maybe they're just too comfortable with silence." Laughter. Applause. A ripple of electric affirmation. She didn't mention Trump. She didn't need to. The contrast was already vivid. Palm Beach, Florida, 5:03 p.m. In a chandelier-lit ballroom, Donald Trump sipped Diet Coke while being introduced by a venture capitalist who wore a $30,000 watch and called public school teachers government babysitters. Trump forced a smile as he took the mic. "Folks, we're under attack," he began. "Not just from the left, but from the young. The ungrateful. The loudmouths." Someone chuckled. "They don't build. They destroy. They don't plan, they tweet." He looked around for laughter. Some gave it politely. Others shifted uncomfortably. "I saw that debate. She talks like she's saving the country. But who really saved it? Me. You. We saved it by building walls, not singing lullabies." No applause. He pushed forward anyway. "She's clever. She's polished. But let's be honest, she's not me. And she never will be." Still, the room felt thinner than usual. Because something was changing, and even the megadonors could feel it. Back in Detroit. A girl in the front row raised her hand. "What do we do when they stop listening?" she asked. AOC smiled. "We speak louder. But not with volume. With truth." The girl blinked. "And when truth isn't enough?" AOC stepped off the stage and walked toward her. "Then we organize. Because when we move together, no tower can block the sun." Someone captured that line. By midnight, it was spray-painted on a boarded-up building in Atlanta. No tower can block the sun. The contrast was no longer a matter of opinion. It was a generational fault line. Congress was buzzing, and not because of legislation. In a committee room usually reserved for policy briefings, aides whispered in corners, young staffers replayed clips on their phones, and even senior members, gray-haired, slow to change, were shifting in their seats. AOC had just walked past them in the hallway. Head high. No entourage. No smugness. Just presence. Behind her, a small group of younger representatives, both Democrat and Independent, followed like a current she never asked for but now carried effortlessly. "She's not just making noise," murmured Representative Jamie Raskin to a colleague. "She's setting the tone. She's setting the agenda," the colleague replied. Meanwhile, in a closed-door budget discussion, an older Republican senator leaned across the table. "If we don't start answering these kids with something more than tax cuts and flags, we're gonna lose the floor permanently." Across the hall, AOC sat with two young interns who had written a draft climate resolution over the weekend. She didn't tell them how to improve it. She asked them what they believed in. Manhattan, New York, 2:04 p.m. Trump sat in a cigar lounge beneath gold crown molding and velvet curtains. His old allies surrounded him. Fund managers. Talk show hosts. Two senators who owed their elections to his endorsements. But something in their tone was different today. He poured himself a drink. "So, what's the play, gentlemen?" he asked, expecting affirmation. Silence. Finally, a senator coughed. "She's dangerous." Trump smirked. "To who?" "To you." The room tensed. Trump leaned back. "She's a moment. I'm a movement." Another ally spoke, hesitantly. "But your movement might be starting to look backward. And hers looks, well, forward." Trump slammed his glass down, not shattered, but enough to make them blink. "She's emotion. I'm reality." Someone whispered, "She's reality to a whole new generation, sir." He said nothing. Because for the first time, the words didn't just annoy him. They unnerved him. Capitol, 6:22 p.m. That evening, a photo of AOC walking down the Capitol steps alone, with the setting sun behind her and her speech notes in hand, went viral. Someone captioned it. "She doesn't walk ahead of us. She walks with us." By contrast, Trump's planned Fox appearance was cancelled last minute. The host cited schedule conflicts. Insiders knew it was something else, momentum had shifted, and they weren't sure how to frame it. Because while Trump stood in gilded rooms defending his legacy, AOC was outside, rebuilding the future brick by brick. And every brick was a voter. A believer. A voice that used to be silent. The stage was split, half red, half blue, under a grand arch of American flags. The event was branded as the future of democracy, and organizers had insisted both figures speak, one after the other. They never expected them to collide. But they did. Donald Trump had just finished his keynote. He spoke for 38 minutes, mostly about restoring greatness, warning of socialism, and reminding the room of his legacy. As he stepped off stage to lukewarm applause, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez stepped on. They passed each other at center stage, just for a second. Trump muttered under his breath, "Try not to cry." AOC didn't flinch. She paused only long enough to look him in the eye and say, "Try not to run." Then she faced the crowd. "Some people say I'm too young to lead. Too angry. Too different," she began. "They said the same to every woman who ever dared to raise her voice in a room full of men who mistake fear for strength. The room was quiet, reverent. They tell me, be more like him. Calm. Calculated. Ruthless." She looked toward the edge of the stage, where Trump sat behind the curtain, watching from the shadows. "But I wasn't raised to worship gold. I was raised to protect people." A beat. "You built towers," she said, her voice rising. "I build futures." A hush. Then thunder. Applause rolled through the room like a storm. But she didn't stop. Towers are tall. Cold. Empty. Futures are crowded. Noisy. Alive. Cameras flashed. Reporters whispered, "That's the quote. That's the headline." She closed her folder. "He built for himself. I build for us." And with that, she stepped down. Not flanked by security, not bolstered by spectacle. Just a young woman with a fire that didn't need fuel, because it burned from within. Backstage. Trump stood frozen. He didn't speak to the press. He didn't smile. He simply turned and walked out a side door. As he entered his SUV, a junior reporter shouted, "Mr. Trump, any comment on her speech?" The door shut in silence. But online, the words were already everywhere. "You built towers. I build futures." It was on hats, banners at protests, profile bios. AOC didn't trademark the line. She released it. Because movements don't belong to one person. They belong to the moment. And this one was hers. He built towers, steel, glass, ego stacked to the clouds. But she? She built classrooms, clinics, courage. In the end, towers rust, fall, and fade. But futures? They grow. They multiply. They outlive the builder. And maybe that's the truth we all needed to hear: you don't need to be loud to be lasting. You just need to be real. This wasn't just a debate. It was a passing of the torch. And the fire? It's just getting started.